This is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from Roberto S. Medina. And Roberto has this question. Roberto tells us that he recently saw a video from what he describes as a prominent group. And in the video they were discussing self-initiation. And they took the point of view that self-initiation is not legitimate, and unless a witch comes out of a coven, they are simply play acting. And Roberto was confused by this, I assume because it's not the background that Roberto comes from, and wanted to know my opinion. And to give you my opinion, we must first start by defining our terms. Witchcraft is the practice of magic. You find it all around the world, you find it in pretty much every religion there is, sometimes approved of, sometimes disapproved of, but culturally pretty much always present. And some of those traditions feature initiation and some do not. In European backgrounds, there are all kinds of different traditions of witchcraft, some of which feature initiation and some of which do not. Now, some people want to take a narrower and more idiosyncratic definition of the word witch, but frankly, that and $5 will buy you a cup of coffee at Starbucks, but you'd better remember the $5. In actual practice, witchcraft is the practice of magic. Now, if we're talking about witchcraft, no one can say that one must or must not be initiated because there are all kinds of traditions that don't feature that. All kinds of people historically have practiced witchcraft who were not initiates of any particular organization. It was a folk practice in many cases. Now, the late Margaret Murray felt that that folk practice reflected a highly organized religion that had survived for hundreds of years in Christian Europe. And although I have a higher opinion of Dr. Murray than some people do, I'd have to say that she was wrong about that. If you look at European traditions of witchcraft, they mostly appear to be folk practice. And while they may come from ancient things, they were not that highly organized. And I have to say that if we're talking witchcraft, some witches involve initiation, some do not. Now, if we're talking more narrowly, any organization has the right to say that you must meet certain criteria to be part of that organization. Every order of priesthood has that right as well. And there are orders of priesthood who might be termed witches, and part of that larger movement of witchcraft, who are more narrow in their needs, and they have every right to say you must be initiated to be part of their order. And if that's what's being discussed, well, that's perfectly fine. I had the Correllian Tradition, you must be initiated to be one of our priesthood. But I don't regard that as having anything to do with other traditions and their legitimacy. That's our custom. And again, when we're talking witchcraft, the term is not that narrow, and it certainly does not absolutely require initiation because historically, again, most witchcraft practices were on the level of folk magic and did not feature initiation. Most of them today are on that level. So that's my first answer. Now, I'm assuming that we're actually talking about Wicca, not necessarily witchcraft. People sometimes use these terms interchangeably, and to a point that's fine, but Wicca is something much more specific. And many people will tell you that Wicca is a religion. I will tell you it is a movement composed of several religions, which are related but different. They have different origins, they have different ideas. Dianic Wicca is not like Gardnerian Wicca. Gardnerian Wicca is not like Correllian Wicca. And we simply have to disagree about the way we go about things. And I think that we can agree to disagree, and I believe that for the most part, that is the position pretty much everyone is taking now, as opposed to the era of the identity wars when we all fought about these things and did tremendous damage to our movement. So, as a Correllian Wiccan, I will tell you that I am completely fine with self-initiation, both in the sense of solitaries who are connected to their own personal path, and in the sense that for Correllian initiation, you don't necessarily have to be at a temple or involve any person other than yourself, because the initiation itself is coming from Goddess, not from the priesthood who are performing it. They merely facilitate it. And Goddess will take who she chooses. So I have no problem with self-initiation in that sense, although again, to be considered Correllian clergy, you would have to be initiated, but it can be a solitary ritual. Now, coming back to the word Wicca, it's important to bear in mind that there are two words pronounced Wicca. One has one C, W-I-C-A, one has two C's, W-I-C-C-A, and they are not the same. Wicca with one C comes from Gerald Gardner. There's room to discuss whether he created it or merely adapted it from something older, but it definitely does come from Gerald Gardner. The plural is Wicca. And from that background, I believe they absolutely require initiation. They have every right to do that. They are a specific order. Wicca with two C's is a term that comes from Charles Cardell, who led a group that worshiped the god Atho, and in many ways I think more closely resembled the writings of Margaret Murray, and he meant the word for a much wider group of people, particularly because he himself was not part of that Gardnerian matrix, nor were his people. Obviously, he did not coin the term to refer only to them, but to, again, a wider group. And a number of groups today still use the term in that way, though others have tried to narrow it. And I will again point out Dianic Wicca and Correllian Wicca as major traditions that do not come from the Gardnerian matrix. And all of these different traditions, whether they are witchcraft or Wicca or they call themselves something else, they have the right, if they are organizations, to have requirements, and initiation may be one of these. But if we're talking about witchcraft in a generalized sense, and in my opinion, even if we're talking about Wicca in the generalized eclectic sense, it's an entirely different matter. It's an individual path, and for the most part, most of the people following it are not part of groups and could not have that kind of initiation. And they are the larger part of the movement. I, again, as the head of the Correllian tradition, have no issue with self-initiation. I will take people as I find them, as my mother used to say, and I will evaluate whether they are real or play acting based on what they do and how they perform, and not on what someone else says. And so I have no trouble with it, and my tradition has no trouble with it, and that is both in the sense of initiation as a solitary ritual and practicing witchcraft without a particular initiation. So those would be my opinions. They are, of course, from a distinctly Correllian point of view, and others may give you different answers, but you're asking me, so you're getting my answer. And I hope you find it helpful, and until next time, may you blessed be.
Wicca. Wicca is a nature-based pagan religion focused on the worship of the Mother Goddess and her consort, and the observance of the cycles of nature and the universe. Wicca is highly eclectic, drawing from many sources both in its origin and in contemporary practice. Wicca also acknowledges and seeks the development of the higher powers of the soul through the practice of magic.
Hi, I'm Reverend Lori Denman, one of the Deans of Mentoring at witchschool.com, your pagan education anywhere, anytime resource. I'd like to talk a little bit today about what it takes to be a mentor at Witch School. All of our mentors have completed the coursework that they mentor for, plus they have undergone an extensive training course that teaches them how to be a qualified mentor. So when you become a supporting member at witchschool.com, you know that you've got a fully trained, been there, done that on the coursework mentor. And you can establish a one-on-one relationship with this person as they guide you through your journey. If you want to understand more about mentoring at witchschool.com, contact mentor support at witchschool.com.